Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please sit down. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I understand you've already had a long but wonderful evening thus far. I'll try to make this painless. First of all, Clarence, thanks for the introduction, and thanks for, and everyone in this room knows I mean it, and they know you mean it. Thanks for standing up, giving hope to an awful lot of kids and adults who wonder. You know, I am Jill's husband, Joe. And I want to thank everyone at the American Institute of Stuttering, especially the dedicated staff and the generous supporters. You know, folks, on behalf of stutterers and former stutterers everywhere, many of whom are here tonight, I want to thank you for freeing so many of our voices. And that's really what you do. You know, every trial endured and weathered in the right spirit makes a soul nobler and stronger than it was before. Those are the words of my favorite poet, William Butler Yeats. When I first read those words, I could barely say his name without stuttering. I memorized that quote and read it aloud in front of a mirror. I, like no Horatio Alger story, we lived in a 3-bedroom split-level home with, I had 2 brothers and a sister. And of course, the princess got the 10 by 12 room alone. She is my best friend in the whole world too, by the way, and helped me get through what all of you stutterers know is not an easy time when you're stuttering. And my siblings were good. I was the oldest. That's probably why they were good. I'd stand in front of the mirror, and I was saying this to Bruce. I used to stutter like some of you very badly. And the thing that I hated the most was I'd contort my face when I stuttered. And I was so ashamed and so embarrassed. And I used to stand in front of the mirror, and it was Yeats and Emerson and meek young men who grow up in libraries. And I'd go through the whole Emerson quote and try to watch my face so that I wouldn't contort it, so I could get a rhythm to try to gain control of how I spoke. Bruce, you memorized plays from the beginning. I wasn't that smart. But Bruce, a lot of people didn't know that I used to stutter and didn't know you used to stutter. I have an admission to make. This organization really very early on, I went to a Catholic boys' school. It was a good school in Claymont, Delaware, and it was taught by the Norbertine priest, and we had a priest named, who was a hell of an athlete. He was 28, I guess, and we were 18, and he was from Green Bay, Wisconsin, was drafted by the Packers and decided to become a priest. And we all admired him, and about 5 years after I left, he left the priesthood and became very involved in the National Stuttering Association. And I was a young senator elected at age 29. And in full disclosure, he asked me if I'd come and speak at one of the association dinners. And I made up an excuse that I couldn't do it. The truth of the matter was I was afraid to do it. Not that I'd be unable to speak, but I was afraid that if people knew I stuttered, they would have thought something was wrong with me. Because for the longest time in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, there was a lot of debate about whether or not those of us who stuttered suffered from some other problem that caused us to stutter. And like Bruce said, I too thought I was handicapped. I remember to this day how stuttering felt, how dehumanizing, how embarrassing, how much it put into question, in my own mind as well, my capabilities. Thank God I had a mother and a father and a family like Aaron's family, and his son has. I had my own in-house American Institute for Stuttering. It was the Biden family. And I look back on it, and I mean this sincerely. I don't know Bruce and many others of you who've overcome stuttering, but it taught me things I probably shouldn't have learned. I learned how to fight. I'm not being facetious. I was a pretty good athlete, and I learned how to fight, which is not an admirable thing. But I also learned, that it was more important for any of the young people in this audience to focus on the things that were the capabilities I really did have, not focus on what was viewed as a liability, that I stuttered. And my mother, every time I'd go out of the house, my mother would say, "Joey, look at me." She'd make me look her in the eye. Look at me. Look at me. Remember, you're the smartest boy in that class. Remember, Joey. Remember, nobody's better than you, Joey. Remember, Joey, you're a really good athlete. Remember, Joey, what a good person you are. Look at me, Joey. Look at me. Not a joke. Not a joke. She made me focus on things about me that I thought I really could develop. And that my stuttering, in a sense, hid those things from other people. My mom had an expression, and she's repeated it through difficult times in my life and Jill's and my life, losses that, like all of you, we've had. She'd say, out of everything terrible, Joey, something good will happen if you look hard enough for it. If you look hard enough for it. And she was right. And I suspect you'd say the same, Bruce, and I don't know Bruce. I'm a fan, but I've just met him for the first time. But I'm not being facetious. My guess is I learned so much from having to deal with stuttering. It gave me insight into other people's pain, other people's suffering. It made me understand that everyone has something they're fighting to overcome and sometimes trying to hide. Ask the honorees in this room tonight. Ask Sandra Flom. Ask Michael Sheehan. Ask Clarence Page. Ask Sir Henry Evans. Ask Tina Brown. I don't know. I know Sheehan well. I don't know the rest of you that well. But I'm prepared to bet that now that you have overcome it, you wouldn't trade for the world, having gone through what you had to go through. It taught you that there isn't anything you aren't able to overcome. It taught you that if you set your mind to it, nothing can bring you down nor humiliate you. It taught you, it gave you insight into both the people who were the bullies and the ones who made fun of you and their inadequacies. And it gave you insight into the people who would look and you could tell. You could see while you were being made fun of in school, you could see the sadness in their eyes, even if they did not want to speak up. It taught me, Clarence will remember this, the president, one of the best lines the president had we were talking about the gridiron dinner a couple years, I guess 4 or 5 years ago, he stood up and he said, "Well, folks," he said, "I'm learning to speak without a teleprompter, and Joe Biden's learning to speak with one." He had no idea how true that was. Because what do stutterers hate? Reading the written word. I can't memorize a whole play, but I don't forget anything. Not a joke. It's taught me to be a fairly good extemporaneous speaker. When you stutter, there's so many gifts that come if you look at them. It taught me to anticipate, and every one of you, what the person you were about to approach what was on their mind. I remember I was a paper boy and I used to have to collect for the Wilmington newspaper. And my next door neighbor, a fella who worked up in Philadelphia, a lawyer named Mr. Schultze, his wife had passed away. He loved the Phillies and the Philadelphia Eagles. And every time I'd go on Friday to collect, or Saturday to collect for the paper, I'd practice as I walked up the short walk exactly what I was going to say to Mr. Schultze before he answered the door. And I tried like hell to anticipate what was going to be on his mind. And it was always a good bet in baseball season. It would be something about the Phillies. And I would walk up and say, Mr. Schultze, how are you? How about those Phillies? Well, it's not a joke, those of you who are serious bad stutterers. It gives you insight. It makes you think. It makes you focus on what the other person is made of. It makes you focus on what you think may be on their mind. And it's an incredible asset in my business. And my guess is in most of your endeavors. It develops an instinct. To all of you young people and parents who are here tonight, if I could share one piece of advice with you, it would be this. First, your stutter does not define who you are. Your stutter is not about who you are. It has nothing to do with who you are at your core. It has nothing to do with your intellectual competence. It has nothing to do with your decency, your character. Everything that matters, it has nothing to do with. And secondly, when you commit yourself to a goal, when you persevere in the face of struggle, you discover strengths you never thought you had, and I guarantee you, you will need someday. Because life has a way of intruding in some very difficult ways. Those strengths will help you overcome not only the challenge of stuttering, but so many other challenges in your life. And you'll be stronger and better for it. If you can walk up to the girl you have a crush on in high school and say, see, by the way, I resent the laughter. It's one of the things I want to say to you parents who might have laughed. You know, think about it. Stuttering is the only thing people think they can laugh at. If I was standing up here talking about having a cleft palate and how I had that operated on, or had a withered arm, or I was partially paralyzed, no one would make fun of it at all. But think about it. Stuttering is the only thing that good people think it's still okay to laugh about. And those of you who are stutterers, remember how it feels. Remember how it feels. It drags you down in that empty hole in your chest. That feeling of panic you get and then anger. That's why I asked Bruce, they saw Colin Firth, he saw the King's Speech. King's Speech did more to help us stutterers than anything else because it made people who don't stutter understand the pain, the depth of the pain. So when you walk up to that pretty girl and you say, will you go to the prom with me? It takes more goddamn darn courage to do that than it does about anything any of you done in your whole life. It takes courage. That's why you kids out there who stutter. My mom used to have an expression. She'd say, bravery lives in every heart and it will be summoned. It will be summoned. And when it's summoned and you meet it, you're a different person. You're the person who will not be intimidated by an overbearing boss. You will be a person who will not be intimidated to back down from what you believe. You'll be a person who will stand their ground if you can screw up the courage to stand up and just speak. Just speak. That opening scene, you may remember when Colin Firth was standing there as George VI, and he stepped up to the microphone in Wembley Stadium. Jill and I were at the movie, and I could feel the blood drain from my face, and I got hard to swallow. I felt that black hole again. My word, just for a second, I felt it again. And Jill looked over and just put her hand and said, "You okay?" I said, "Jill, I hadn't read anything about it." I said, "A stutterer had to have written this play, this movie, because it was too real." And I was right when I spoke to the screenwriter, David Seidler. He told me how he struggled with stuttering, came to see me. Any non-stutterer who saw that movie has now been disabused of the notion that we're not bright, that we're not capable, and it's okay to make a joke about us. Disabused of the notion there's anything humorous about making fun of a stutterer. Neither David nor I have had what you had, the American Institute of Stuttering. The past 13 years, you've focused on helping stutterers overcome more of an affliction than a handicap, focusing your efforts not just on the stutterer, but on the whole family. It's tough for families who never had a stutterer because they're not sure what to do. Most families, if they have 3 children and one is a stutterer and never knew a stutterer, they try to finish every sentence for the stutterer. They think it helps somehow. It does nothing but hurt because it communicates back, I guess Mom's ashamed of me. Wants to cut this off real quick. The work you do is both necessary and important. It's both compassionate and cutting edge. You've given voice to so many who struggle daily to find their own voice. You've made thousands who suffer from the affliction realize that it can be overcome, it can be improved, they're not alone, that with the support of people around them, their deepest fears can be conquered, and their voices can be heard. They might not decide that they can go into the movies on stage or run for high public office or be a national columnist, but they will decide they can be whatever they want to be. So on behalf of stutterers and former stutterers everywhere, some of you are sitting in the room right now, I want to say thank you. Let me say it again. In retrospect, and I mean this sincerely, my word is abiding, the best thing that ever happened to me is that I stuttered badly, that I used to get made fun of, that I know what it feels like to be humiliated. My brothers and sister, my sons and our sons and daughter, our grandchildren, never, 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 never make fun of anyone. In our household, there's a clear rule. You are never allowed to say anything to anyone in anger that is true. Sounds strange. But if the person is obese and overweight, you're never allowed to call them fat. You can say you're stupid in a fight. Oh, I think I'm joking because you can't cut to the quick. It's unfair to go to the heart of something somebody can't control. It's indecent. It's immoral. It's wrong. And so, I think what you're doing really, really matters. And I want to say to some of the kids, young people that are here tonight, that it takes time. There's a beautiful young woman who's the great-granddaughter of my mother's best friend in her whole life, from Scranton, Pennsylvania, and wrote me a letter saying that she'd be here tonight. Her mom wrote me this letter. And as we used to say in the Senate, Clarence, if you excuse a point of personal privilege, her name is Layla. Layla, where are you, honey? I'm not going to embarrass you if you ask you to come up with me here? Come on up here. Said Layla will be here this evening. And I don't think your mom would be upset if she told me that when you came to the Institute the first time, you somehow figured that there's a magic formula, that all of a sudden everything would be okay. But baby, how old are you?
12.
12 years old. When I was 12 years old, for real, I talk like that. Only because I was a great football player and baseball player in high school, not so hot in college, but played. People learned not to make fun of me by that time because I was a better athlete. But when I was a sophomore in college, I signed up for public speaking class to make myself stand up. And I didn't stutter that badly then, unless I had to read. But I still would catch myself like that. Mrs. Biden points out to me, Dr. Biden points out to me, even now, when I'm really tired, I'm supposedly a fairly good speaker. I find myself when I'm tired, catching myself like that once in a while. So baby, you're going to beat this thing, man. And I gave you my telephone number, and you better call.
Okay.
Okay? Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bruce, I committed the same sin you said you committed. He said he had to prepare a speech, and he started talking. Because you can't, if you've been through it, it's hard not to. It's hard not to remember. It's hard not to remember what so many kids are going through. I know this won't take away the pain, but I promise you, you have nothing to be ashamed of, and every reason to be proud. You're all stronger and nobler souls for having confronted stuttering head on. And you will overcome it, I promise you. You still may find yourself pausing and not getting it right all the time. But you will find it will not be the impediment that keeps you from realizing your dreams. So all I have to say to you is, never give up. Never, 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 never give up. And never, never, never let it define you. And I promise you, you'll be stronger adults and better people for it. God bless you all, and may God protect our church. Am I supposed